Well, they just fired 312 bullets into the global economy and nobody heard the shots. That's right, 312 central bank rate cuts in the last 24 months, the second highest monetary intervention in 25 years. Just one cut below 2008, and the world still scrolling. Meanwhile, the global debt just hit 338 trillion and 82% of central banks are now cutting rates not to help you, but to save themselves. You want to talk about a historic and massive liquidity event? This isn't a spark, it's monetary napalm.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
You're damn right we do. And guess what? Bitcoin, the only asset they can't print, is starting to react. That's right. The United States alone now carries 38.3 trillion in government debt, the largest in history. That's more than China, Japan, and Germany combined. Every dollar of new debt requires more printing just to pay interest on the last batch. And this is exactly what Larry Lepard calls the big print. When money dies, people run to things they can't print. Gold, silver, and Bitcoin. They need a denominator that can't be with to preserve their purchasing power because the money is totally
Because look, you're young, you've obviously done extremely well. You could live the Lambo lifestyle, but you're turning your back on that. How do you stay that course? Because I know a lot of, folks or young people I speak to just, want to get rich quick, want the money, but how do you stay focused and see beyond, all the material, shiny, nice objects that you could have, Jack? You could have all of that.
I think Bitcoin taught me that more than anyone else or any other experience, to be totally honest with you, because when you do understand the concept of time and energy and contributions to society, then a fancy car isn't ever worth the Bitcoin that I've worked to acquire. And so I only trade and exchange my Bitcoin for experiences for people I love, to be honest. I mean, how beautiful is it? How beautiful of an idea, I guess, is it that, we can make the world a better place for the people that we care about the most. And so Bitcoin taught me that. It really lowered my time preference and taught me the value of things. I think it's really impossible to value things if there's an infinite amount of dollars. I like to draw this similarity to the promise of death. This is going to get potentially a little weird or dark, but it's the promise of
We
death.
invite that. I invite that.
It's the promise of death that allows us to value our life. If I was never going to die and I knew that, then I'd go to the gym in 1,000 years. I'd think to get married in 10,000 years. I would never care to value today. And that's very similar to the dollar. If there's infinite amounts of dollars and we're going to roll this debt over forever, then how do I value my paycheck right now? And so I think what death means to life, Bitcoin means to money and to value. And so Bitcoin gave me that finite promise that allows me to value the time and energy that I spend right now. And it's not worth expending a tremendous amount of my time and energy on a yellow car that goes really fast. In the same way that knowing that I'm going to die, it's not worth ever wasting a day, a week, a year.
Exactly, Jack. If the money isn't fixed, it's impossible to value anything or own anything. Gold has ripped to over 4K, silver's up 80% this year, and Bitcoin just bounced 10% off the flash crash lows back toward 115K. Why? Because the Fed's $6.6 trillion balance sheet pivot just got exposed. Wall Street's quietly preparing for the end of quantitative tightening, and this means that the money printer is warming up. Again, Arthur Hayes says the next money printing cycle could send Bitcoin to 1 million. And the data backs it up. Every 1% increase in money supply has historically boosted Bitcoin 2 to 3% within months. When they print, well, Bitcoin reacts faster than any other asset on Earth.
As Bitcoin matures, we're going to see less volatility. And this is a function of, I would say, two things. One is the Bitcoin treasury companies, especially Strategy, which has scooped up a large amount, and they are a very consistent, a very reliable buyer at any price. The second is the ETFs, the Bitcoin spot ETFs, largely IBIT. And they have also proven to be a very reliable source of demand for Bitcoin. And I think with these two driving forces, it was always bound to reduce volatility, at least in the near term. But longer term, I just don't see Bitcoin sitting idly in this range or even in the 200,000 range. And I think we're seeing a foreshadowing of this with gold, which is the largest asset on the planet, which has skyrocketed and went up by 50% this year. It would be more like Bitcoin's trying to lull everyone into a false sense of security that they have time to accumulate. But unlike gold, Bitcoin is incredibly scarce and finite. There are only 21 million coins. Gold production will ramp up as demand increases, and we will see that. And we just don't know how much gold there is out there in the world. It's impossible to mathematically, definitively quantify that, but you can with Bitcoin. So I think we're going to see Bitcoin do its thing. It'll mirror gold, but probably in a more spectacular fashion.
And the big banks, the same ones that mocked Bitcoin, are now using it as collateral. Breaking: JP Morgan Chase just announced they'll accept Bitcoin as collateral for loans. Yes, Jamie Dimon's bank, the same guy who once said Bitcoin was a fraud. Meanwhile, Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy just bought another 390 BTC, bringing their stack to 640,808 Bitcoin. They're not buying JPEGs, they're buying the new monetary foundation.
Bitcoin is going to become the monetary standard of the world over the next 2 decades. And my grandkids will transact in sats, not dollars. The dollar will be gone. But 2 decades is a long time. It's not going to happen tomorrow. Dialing in on the shorter term, what I kind of see is I think, we're now at a period where there's a lot of pessimism and negativity, and everyone's frustrated, and which is kind of odd because we're still up 70 or 80% year over year from last June. But gold is kind of stealing the spotlight for a little while, and that's kind of got people concerned. And it doesn't have me concerned at all, because if you look at the 18, 19, and 20 time frame, particularly 19 and 20, what happened is gold took off first because it's more broadly distributed and it smelled all the monetary debasement. And then Bitcoin woke up and went from 10 to 60. 10,000 to 60, really fast. And it's like, the Christopher Walken thing, the lion sits around for a long time, doesn't do anything, and then it wakes up one day and just goes down and kills everybody. And that's what's going to happen with Bitcoin. Bitcoin's going to just come out and wipe everybody out in the next, year, in my opinion. So to me, we're sitting at a very exciting point in time. Gold has gone up a lot. I've been selling some of my gold, selling some of my gold stocks, and positioning into Bitcoin. And I have a lot of Bitcoin to begin with, but the two they work in tandem. But gold is generally an early warning sign. And so what I would say to everyone who's concerned that Bitcoin hasn't been going straight up recently is that gold tells you that the U.S. financial system is in a very, very precarious position, and the world has woken up to it.
From BRICS to the Gulf, countries are moving away from the dollar. Gold buying by central banks is at record levels, 830 tons in 2025 alone, the 16th straight year of accumulation. They stopped selling gold in 2010. Now they can't stop buying it. And you know what else they're watching? Bitcoin's chart against gold. Gold just hit resistance and rolled over. And Bitcoin is bouncing off support in the Bitcoin to gold ratio. According to Crypto Daily, when Bitcoin breaks above 41 ounces of gold, it'll set a new all-time high against gold. Now, according to NYDIG, Bitcoin isn't an inflation hedge. It's a liquidity barometer. And more on NYDIG being completely highly regarded in a moment. But it doesn't care about CPI. It moves when the dollar weakens and when rates fall. Well, geniuses, what causes an explosion in liquidity? And what happens to the money supply when rates fall? Is CPI inflation? Or is an expansion of the money supply inflation? Yeah, numbnuts, now put down the Keynesian peace pipe. Oh, it's not an inflation hedge, while laying out how Bitcoin goes up when the money supply expands. Less Marx and more Mises, for the love of God.
No, I don't think I became very anti-Keynesian. I became very anti-Keynesian policies eventually, but I never became anti-Keynesian if you think of Keynes as the economist. I think Keynes was a great economist.
No, I did. Yeah, okay.
And I think The General Theory is a great book. It just is that I think it offered a hypothesis which, when subjected to the evidence turned out to be wrong.
Okay.
It was an insightful hypothesis. It was a very ingenious hypothesis. The only difficulty with it was that it didn't work.
And what do we have now? 312 rate cuts, falling yields, and a weakening dollar. Pretty much watching the perfect storm for Bitcoin to go ballistic. The dominoes keep falling. Eric Trump's American Bitcoin just bought 1,414 BTC for $163 million, and when asked why, he said countries like the UAE are already buying Bitcoin behind the scenes.
Why should any government be buying Bitcoin? Because it's the single greatest performing asset over the last decade, increasing in value 70% a year, year over year, every year. Like Germany a couple of years ago, there was a great article. You might know the exact numbers, but Germany had like 30,000 Bitcoin or something along those lines, and they sold it right away. They monetized it into their currency, and it was like the worst investment ever made by a government. And by the way, that's a pretty damn low bar, as you know, right? The government should definitely have certain crypto assets on their balance sheet, mainly Bitcoin. And actually the United States government does, right? You have a lot of forfeitures.
Correct.
And they've taken a great stance saying that we're not selling any of it. You have a lot of countries around the world that are actively buying. If you go to, the UAE, if you go to a lot of countries, they are actively putting that in their treasuries. And you look at the Fortune 500 companies, they are actively hoarding Bitcoin. The biggest families, the biggest companies, countries, sovereign wealth funds, and individuals are all hoarding Bitcoin, right? It's why it's been as explosive as it is. And it's funny, people are like, oh, well, Bitcoin's down like 3% now. It's like this time last year, Bitcoin was at like 55,000 or 60,000 roughly. It's had unbelievable explosive growth.
Even Rumble, yes, the video platform, is integrating Bitcoin tipping for its 51 million users this December. That's basically mainstream adoption staring right into our face holes. Now, before we dive into the war brewing inside Bitcoin itself, look at our likes.
3 or 4 times, maybe.
I gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
Let's take a quick second for our sponsors who keep this show on the air over at the Bitcoin Way. If your wealth lives in their system, it's not yours, it's theirs. That's why we scream Bitcoin. That's why you self-custody. And that's why you call our friends over at the Bitcoin Way. They'll walk you through multi-sig, self-custody, privacy, how to run a node, and the tools that keep you sovereign when the fiat system pulls the plug. Don't wait till it's too late. Book a free 30-minute consult today using that link in the show notes. Need cash but don't want to sell your Bitcoin? Ledn is the global leader in Bitcoin-backed loans, issuing over $9 billion in loans since 2018, and they were the first to offer proof of reserves. With Ledn, you get custody loans, no credit checks, no monthly payments, and more. Visit learn.ledn.io/simply to learn more and get 25 basis points off your first loan. Now, inside Bitcoin, a new battle is brewing. A mysterious developer dropped BIP 444, a temporary soft fork to restrict arbitrary data like ordinals inscriptions. Something about wizards, I don't know. But supporters say it's to prevent illegal content from threatening node operators. Critics call it censorship, Orwellian control. Luke Dash Jr. says it's an emergency fix. Jameson, Lop Return, and Peter Todd say it's an attack on Bitcoin's neutrality. If the miners and users split, it could trigger one of the biggest governance showdowns since 2017. This isn't entirely a code debate. It's a test of what Bitcoin fundamentally is. A neutral settlement layer or a censored chain controlled by developers. And the timing couldn't be more poetic. As 312 central banks print money to oblivion, Bitcoiners are fighting to keep their protocol incorruptible. That's the contrast of our era. They print money and we fight for truth in code. 312 rate cuts, 338 trillion in debt, 6.6 trillion Fed pivot, gold near record highs, just hit all-time highs, and you know what I mean. Bitcoin ready to reclaim dominance over gold, and Larry Lepard put it best. Bitcoin is going to become the monetary standard of the world over the next 2 decades. That's not hyperbole. That's the logical endpoint of a broken system. Because when the people who print money start hoarding the things they can't print, gold and Bitcoin, the game's already over. The detonation already happened. The shockwave's just reaching us now. This is the great monetary reset, and Bitcoin isn't just surviving it, it's becoming it. So, and get those tickets to Mining Disrupt 2025. Get those tickets to Mining Disrupt 2025. See the future of Bitcoin mining up close in Dallas, Texas, November 11th through the 13th. The biggest names in the industry, Cutting edge rigs, Bitcoin, and AI integration, the signal you won't get anywhere else. Grab your tickets today and use promo code SimplyBitcoin for 20% off, and we'll see you there. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Smash the like, subscribe, and give us a pant by sharing the Sound Money Gospel. Set those notifications for the best in Bitcoin news delivered to you daily. And also because we got tons of great stuff coming your way from Sophie, Dante, Oceans. They're all dropping heat, so keep your head in a swivel. And I'll catch you next time. Love you guys. Peace.
If you prefer to go down with the ship, you.